welcome back to the Fire Burns Within channel. Today's review is of course the mighty Iron Maiden and their brand new album Senjutsu. It is their 17th studio album and it's a double album again, and it's a very long one, 82 minutes I believe. It was recorded at Guillaume Tell Studios again in Paris, France, as with, I think, the last couple of albums at least, if not more. And it was recorded back in 2019, so it was actually recorded slightly before the pandemic hit. So they've been hanging on to this for a good while, and it's finally released in September of 2021. The personnel of the band hasn't changed at all since the return of Bruce and Adrian Smith. They've had the same core members: Steve Harris, of course, Dave Murray, Smith, Bruce Dickinson, Nico on drums, and Yannick Gers on the other guitars. Okay, let's get on with this track by track review. Track 1 is the title track, Senjutsu. I must admit I'm struggling with this title track. It has elements which are sort of emotional and quite worthy, but then it seems to stagger on and doesn't lead to anywhere in particular that I can say I like. I find the solos rather tedious and screechy as well. Bruce holds the semblance of a decent melody in some parts of the song. The song is sort of like a sprawling and rather doomy track, which to me doesn't really suit Maiden, and it is a bit of a departure for them. There's like a roaming keyboard sound that is heard throughout the song as well, which actually is quite a theme for the whole of the album. This sort of roaming keyboard sound that appears as sort of like backing, which we can hear in quite a few songs. It's a dark and mystical sounding song, and it's a real experiment for Maiden. It is quite a departure, but I personally did not really like this song at all, to be honest. And my rating for Senjutsu is 5 out of 10. Track 2 is Stratego, and it's the second single released from the album before its full release. A much better song all round, more in the vein of classic Galloping Maiden, although it is rather ponderous as well. It's not like full speed Maiden by any means, but it does excite a little more. It suffers from something that a lot of the songs have in this album, and that is the theme of the vocal lines following the guitar melody line. So when the guitar plays a melody, the vocal lines mimic it. The chorus on this song, however, is a really cool one, a really enjoyable chorus, and it does remind me of another song, but I can't quite put my finger on it. But the melody is really catchy, and I do really enjoy the song Stratego. 8 out of 10. Track 3 is The Writing on the Wall, which was of course the very first single released from the album. When I first heard the song, I must admit I thought it was too much of a departure for Maiden. I wasn't expecting this sort of Western themed guitar lines, and I was really quite surprised by it, and I wasn't fully into it. But I must admit, with constant plays, this song is starting to grow on me a fair bit. It is still a plodding song, and it sort of suffers from what a lot of Maiden songs suffer from in the latter days, which is that they just get stuck in a rut or a groove, and they just can't get out of it sometimes. I mean, the chorus is really quite cool on this. I mean, it's starting to get under my skin, the chorus. I do enjoy the cool, mystical, classic Maiden motif in this song as well, followed by a couple of nice solos as well. I think the final one being the one from Adrian Smith. So this song is growing on me, the writing on the wall. 7.5 out of 10. Track 4 is Lost in a Lost World. The very slow and quiet start hurts this song in my opinion. The opening verses do very little for me before the song finally kicks in to a decent riff. Bruce sounds pretty good in this song with some reverb on his vocals, which I personally feel there should be more of. The guitar line that Bruce sings to on the pre-chorus is a bit annoying before we reach the slowed down chorus, which has a similar feel to the Wicker Man. The guitar melody that follows is classic Maiden though. Little bit of Fear of the Dark guitar melody feel to that song, to that part. This song unfortunately suffers from being overlong. The length of it means that it's, you know, it could have been a good 6-minute song, but it's 9 minutes. So I don't know. It could have been better, but it isn't. It is a decent song. So 7.5 out of 10 for Lost in a Lost World. Track 5 is Days of Future Past, and surely the shortest song on the album can't be the best song on the album, can it? Well, it's actually really very close. This is definitely my favourite track on the album so far. It's not really a fast track per se, but for the basis of this album, it's about as upbeat as the album is going to get, and it's much easier to enjoy for me. Bruce sounds great singing the verses. The chorus is really nice. It sort of comes out into view, and I'm sure this is going to be a great one to sing live. The chorus is really an inspired piece of writing. I even quite like the quiet part where it sort of quietens down and then it returns back to the chorus. It sounds really good, that part, for me. And I wanted it sort of to continue on a bit, but again, I really enjoyed Days of Future Past. 8.5 out of 10 for me. Track 6 is called The Time Machine. A typically quiet start, but before long another slow and plodding, typically Latter-day Maiden riff surfaces. We've been here before. Bruce's melodies are actually pretty cool though, even if the music is sort of, you know, of the same vein as what they've been doing in recent albums and on this album. That familiar guitar melody starts off the pre-chorus, and it's actually pretty cool and a nice tempo at that point. The song is one Maiden probably writes in their sleep. It's a good song overall. Not overly excited by The Time Machine, but it is a good, solid latter-day Iron Maiden song. 7.5 out of 10. Track 7 is The Darkest Hour, and it's an Iron Maiden ballad, no less. There's not been too many of those, has there? Bruce sounds pretty good, actually. The chorus is pretty epic. I must admit, on the first couple of plays of this song, I was very unimpressed, but on the third and fourth play, I was slightly getting into this song. It reminds me of a song that would appear on, say, The X Factor. It's a very brooding song. This is an interesting departure that is, you know, slowly growing on me, actually, after the first couple of plays. The solos are very emotional and cool as well on The Darkest Hour. So 7.5 out of 10. Track 8 is Death of the Celts. And finally, the first of the full Steve Harris epics that close out the album. This is basically the sequel to the Klansman, if you will. I actually really like the acoustic opening to this track, but dislike the opening verses. As soon as the verses starts, it starts to get quite samey and annoying. It's got a plodding feel again. And the production doesn't help as well. It's very muddy, very dirty sounding. However, the song redeems itself with some great riffs in the instrumental section towards the end, and is finally a pretty decent sequel to The Klansman, though it could have been more rousing as well. I did enjoy this song though, so 8 out of 10 for Death of the Celts. Track 9 is The Parchment, another slow and brooding start with a mystical motif starting off the longest song on the album. The main riff kicks in with that Egyptian scale feel to it. It's all played very slow and ponderous though, and could do with an uplift of pace. Again, Bruce's vocals follow exactly the guitar melody, a trick that is used time and time again on this album. I'm waiting for The Parchment to fully grow on me, but it's a slow process and I've found it hard going. I can hear things which I like, such as a cool little guitar line, but it never fully gets under my skin. It's just another latter-day Steve Harris epic in the end, with all the traits and Harris trademarks. The song stays pretty much in the same tempo until pretty much towards the end, when it goes into a slightly faster galloping section, which is pretty much typical Steve Harris, of course. I wanted more out of this song, and I don't know, it just feels a little bit rehashed, The Parchment. So at the moment, I can only give it a 7 out of 10. Track 10 and the final track on the album is Hell on Earth. Starts off as usual with a simple acoustic melody before we're off on that mid-tempo riff style that Steve Harris knows back to front. This time, however, it is a very catchy riff, and you get the chorus melody as a guitar line before you even hear the chorus with it, which is actually pretty cool. As per usual, Bruce's vocals are following the guitar melody during the verses, but it really works very well this time. Bruce's high notes are a little strained, however the chorus this time is a really catchy affair, and perhaps the best on the album. The song continues on with a lot of twists and turns as usual with Harris epics, but this one is quite inspired. I think this is definitely my favourite song on the album. So I sign off the album with a 9 out of 10. Overall thoughts on Maiden's 17th studio album. I think it is a mixed affair, and it has all the usual Maiden traits of bombast and, you know, the usual riff styles and, more of the latter day, length that they like to use in most of the songs is all present. And there is a couple of departures, of course. What with the title track being quite a slow and doomy affair, and then you've got the Writing on the Wall, which is a sort of Western themed affair, but an interesting song. But overall, I think, the album is a good, solid album, but there's a lot of flaws with it. The pacing, as usual, is lacking, to be honest. I don't know. I mean, it could be an age thing, or I don't know what you can put it down to, but the way they write songs is just, they slow the song down to a tempo that makes it, I don't know, manageable to play live. I don't know if it's a live thing or whether they, just don't feel like writing fast songs anymore, don't have the energy to write fast songs. But that's my take on it. My top 3 tracks on the album are Hell on Earth, which I've already mentioned, Days of Future Past, which is a great song, and Stratego maybe as the third choice. Instrumentally speaking, the album is solid, if a little unspectacular. The production is one of the major flaws of the album. This live sound, this raw and live sound which they continue to use is sometimes a difficult listen. It's hard to put into words, but the classic 80s Maiden sound is history. It's just not coming back, it seems. I must admit, I'm quite pleased with Bruce's performance on this album. I think he sounds a little better on this album than he did on The Book of Souls. He sounded more strained on that album than he does now, so maybe his illness at that time was hindering him slightly, and he's past that now, thankfully, and he sounds pretty good on this album, I must admit. My average score for this album is 7.6 out of 10. It's a mixed album, like I said. It's got some highlights. It's Iron Maiden after all, so there is a certain level of quality to the music that cannot be denied. However, it seems the glory days of the mid-80s will finally never return. Okay, I hope you enjoyed listening and watching these pictures and this review of the new Iron Maiden album, Senjutsu. Okay, stay tuned.